What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of Smoke World. I'm your host, Stone. So go grab that stick, go grab a glass or whatever you're going to be drinking, and let's sit back and have a conversation. You can follow me on Instagram at SmokeWorld50. You can send those emails to smokeworld50@gmail.com. On this episode, we're going to take a turn. I sit back with my man, Jake. Now, Jake works in the Urban City Police Department. He's going to give us the behind-the-scenes look on those crime scenes. He's going to give us opinions on the uptick of all the violence that's been taking place in these cities in reference to the shootings and the other things that you may have been watching on CSI that are not really reality. But he's going to break that down for us. So sit back, enjoy the show, and thanks for listening to Smoke World. Special guest, we're going to call him Jake. And we're not talking Jake from State Farm, but Jake, he works in the Urban City Police Department. He's going to give us a little background on that whole particular thing of what's going on with the cities, with the increase of shootings. And, you know, he has a vast amount of knowledge and experience in what he does. He's been with the police department for a number of years, though. We're going to get started with the conversation. What's up, Jake? How you doing today, sir?
What's going on, Stoney?
Oh, man, everything is everything, man. Now, we're going to get right into it here, Jake. First of all, I know you're a smoker. Would you like to share what you like to smoke and what you take care of that with?
Oh, man, I blame you, number one. Let me get this out of the way first and foremost, because I blame you for starting me along this cigar journey back in 1998, somewhere around there at Bike Week in Myrtle Beach, I believe it was, when you gave me my first cigar. And ever since then, I have been exploring and traveling along this journey of cigardom, and have managed to smoke some very, very wonderful sticks, some very crappy sticks. But I can truly say that this journey has brought along a lot of friendships, and a lot of people don't understand that the cigar culture goes beyond just the cigar, because it actually brings people together and it sparks conversations. And I can say that I have really been enlightened in various areas and platforms from being in the cigar world. So I blame you. So what I've been
I'll take that blame. That sounds pretty good.
So what I've been smoking lately, I'm one of the things I'm usually typically a Nicaraguan cigar lover. Not to besmirch or diminish any other country's cigars, but Nicaraguan seems to be where my palate tends to gravitate towards. And though a lot of cigars now are up to sometimes 7-country blends, like the AVO Ritmo Synchro is a 7-country blend of tobaccos, which comes together in an amazing cigar. But
okay,
I tend to, do the My Father stuff, the Oliver Serie V, one of my favorites. Of course, you can't knock the Liga Privada, the Drew Estates staple, I guess you say, or one of the Drew Estates mainstays. So that's what I typically like to smoke. Lately, my drink of choice, I'm a whiskey drinker. I come from a long line of whiskey drinkers because my grandfather was a whiskey drinker, and I wish he was around now to taste the whiskey now. He drank straight Canadian Club.
Oh, wow.
Like it was porter. And I don't think that my palate or my stomach could handle Canadian Club right now. I have a more refined palate that the Macallans and the Glenfiddichs.
Oh, you're in the big boy. Okay, you're in the big boy league.
Yeah. I don't think Canadian Club would meld too good with anything that I smoke right now. I think it would bottom out even the most high-priced Liga that you could smoke. But also, I'm truly a big fan of Uncle Nearest, 1886, man. I'm kind of having affinity for that. Not only just the whiskey itself, but the story behind
the
whiskey. And I encourage people to delve into the history behind Uncle Nearest. Short story short of it is that his recipe or his whiskey making was somewhat commandeered by Jack Daniels. And of course,
Yes.
Jack Daniels got all of the play, because Uncle Nearest was a black man. He was a preacher. So I'm sure there was some aversion to that because of what he did. And being a bootlegger or a whiskey maker back then, being black was probably hard to get people to recognize the quality of it. But it is a very, very, it's an excellent whiskey. That's what I tend to gravitate towards. I'm also, on the bourbon side of things, Basil Hayden, the Caribbean Rye, is one of my other favorites. So I run the gamut of what I drink between bourbons and whiskeys, and it depends. It doesn't necessarily have to be. I don't pair a particular cigar with a particular whiskey. It depends on what I'm in the mood for at the time. So it kind of varies.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense there, brother. All right, I'm gonna change gear just a little bit on here because you're a police officer in an urban city, and I want to go down just a little bit. Okay, how long have you been a police officer? First of all, number one.
27 years.
27 years. Okay, and within the police department, you mean? So when did you start? We can do the math, but let's not try to do that because everybody didn't go to Catholic school. Some of us went to parochial public schools.
I started in 1993, actually.
Okay. Now, do you want to take us on the journey? Okay, in 1993, you started the police academy, and you came out. Where did you go? Did you go to? Did you ride around in the city? What was your assignment after graduation? Do you recall?
After, I recall day one. Don't forget, I'm seeing like I'm like 95 years old. I barely have a grasp of what the heck I got to do, and that I got to make a note that I got to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes. I started out in patrol like most cops do. It was really, really an eye-opening experience. I wouldn't say that I was oblivious to what happened in the street because I grew up in an urban environment, so. I was aware of what went on in the streets, but looking at it from the perspective of law enforcement, it was really, really enlightening. You see the best in people, and unfortunately, you get to see the worst in people. I moved through into investigative positions, several investigative positions, narcotics investigations. I was a detective for a period of time. Conducting, regular investigations, robberies, shootings, domestic stuff like that. And then I moved into a command position, and it allowed me to get a lot more experience from the administrative side of things, as well as the planning and strategizing and just, moving people, in the field. So.
Okay. Now you say you worked in narcotics for a little bit. I just want to give a little background on that because folks are kind of fascinated. You got every movie that's made out here dealing with some type of narcotics or military scenario. So in the narcotics division, what was your assignments? Okay, so you worked narcotics. Were you plain clothes? Were you a uniform personnel?
Yeah, I was actually plain clothes, and it was actually a very, very interesting job. That was one of the times that I truly, truly enjoyed. Where I was working and what we did, and I felt like we were truly making a dent in in the crime and drug crimes, because oftentimes a lot of other crimes have a nexus with narcotics, whether it be property crimes that are driven by users who are committing property crimes to feed their habit, or whether it be, the gun violence that's associated with narcotics. Narcotics is an inherently violent field or area, because anytime you have anything concerning money, you're going to have an escalated level of violence, and you are going to have some of the most violent people, in the drug game. So there's a true nexus between a lot of other crime and narcotics.
Gotcha. Okay, we're gonna get a little more current to where you're at now. It's my understanding you work in what they call the crime scene investigation unit, and everybody's familiar with TV, watch the CSI. And I really want to dial just a little bit into that because the fact that we have this TV show that's been out for many years, and it's been a hit, the CSI. Now, can you give me any correlation between the TV show CSI and the reality of what you do on a daily basis on the CSI? Is there any correlation? Is there any relation or reality to what we see on TV to what you really do in the CSI?
There is absolutely a zero legitimate correlation to what they do on television and what we do in real life. I wish it was as easy as it was on TV. I wish within 5 minutes we can get a DNA profile off of blood or any other thing of evidentiary value that has a DNA factor. I wish we could get it back in 5 minutes. I wish that fingerprints were so easy to obtain. I wish that fingerprint databases were as fluid and as quick and as accurate as they are on television. CSI has truly given people a false sense of reality with what we really, really do in real life. And it has actually been several studies and papers written upon the CSI effect of how it impacts the criminal justice system from a judicial standpoint, because it is hard to get jurors or to convince jurors of facts that you have at a scene, because their minds say that, hey, Horatio Kane had a job like that, and they found the guy's DNA on the gun, and they found the guy's fingerprints on the gun. One of the most difficult things to fingerprint is a gun oftentimes. It happens, but it's very, very difficult to do. Also, DNA recovery isn't as quick and as easy as people tend to think, or what television has led people to believe. So, something that takes an hour to solve a crime on CSI on television, man, it could take up to months from a DNA standpoint to get a hit on a DNA match, on DNA recovered from some of these scenes. So, the reality of it is it makes our job more difficult, especially at court presentation time, because if people who sit on a jury are avid watchers of these television shows, and not just CSI, but a lot of the police shows on TV are truly unrealistic. A lot of people have this mindset that we have these superpowers and we have these computers that we can manipulate in midair and move one screen to the other and do this, that, and the other. But the reality of it is it doesn't often happen.
Gotcha. Now, what is the process? Because again, maybe the reality would be only this one thing. You guys, meaning the crime scene investigation, is only dispatched after there has been a crime, obviously. So are there various types of crimes that you only respond to? What type of crimes do you respond to? What type of scenes do you process?
We do everything from sexual assaults, rapes, any type of violent crime, any type of violent stabbings, shootings, homicides, anything that there are things that are of evidentiary value that need to be collected, that are beyond the purview of what a normal detective or normal investigator can do. Of course, recovering things of evidentiary value is a very, very sensitive area, because from the point of origin until it is sent and processed, there has to be a consistent and continuous tracking of and a very, very controlled chain of custody of those items to not basically taint the items of evidence. So it's important that evidence, be as pristine as possible when we're there, to that throughout our process of trying to gather anything of DNA value or anything of anything of evidentiary value that is beyond the purview of just picking up something. It is very, very controlled. It is cataloged, and it is basically a step-by-step process that every movement of that item, from its collection to its final disposition, is very, very controlled. So it's a very, very painstaking, very painstaking process. It is a very, very tedious process, because there are so many things that you you have the thing that you do have the ability to do to obtain, like say hypothetically fingerprints. There are several processes that we go through, alternate light sources, black powder, and other things that we utilize to, try to uncover things that aren't necessarily visible to the naked eye that may be able to present themselves as evidence, which will lead us in a direction of finding individuals involved in any type of crime.
Okay, because I'm taking all those pieces of evidence that you collect are going to have to be used. Folks might not realize that, but for its day in court to present to the jury or whomever, the judge, to say, okay, these are the things that were collected at the scene. And again, that's how prosecutions and things are done in the court. So that's a great thing. Now, let me ask you another question on that. Would you say that you respond to a certain crime more than others, such as gunshot victims, unfortunately homicides, or suicides, or anything in particular where you work at? Are there more type of jobs that you respond to than any other?
Yeah, more often than not, my crew is responding to, unfortunately, to homicides. And like I say, you get to see people in their, unfortunately, in their worst conditions, will respond to these assignments. So homicides more than anything we respond to.
Wow. Okay. Now, I mean, we're not going to mention the city, but I've noticed, a lot of these cities are having upticks in their shootings. Do you think you can correlate that between what's going on in the street? Do you think you know why there are more shootings going on than anything in the past? Again, it's be speculation. Again, this is only your opinion.
Yeah. There's so many other variables and so many different things that, people who, why these types of violent crimes are on an uptick. I'm a gun advocate. I'm a gun guy. I love guns. Shooting, just, range shooting and things like that. That's kind of my uncles and grandfathers. They were avid hunters. I think that one of the bigger issues recently there's a large uptick in crime, I think, because we have to think about, the generations are getting younger. The generations out here with guns on the street in most of these cities are getting younger. I think back to, early like late 80s, early 90s, when we had a prolific rise in organized drug gangs. The drug war was getting more and more competitive with the inception or introduction of crack cocaine into a lot of urban areas. So there were a lot of violent crimes back then. I think the difference then and now is they were target specific. Individual organizations were basically having issue with other organizations, and they were target specific. It seems like nowadays in these most recent times that a lot of these shootings are not target specific. They are, you have women getting shot, which was unheard of. You have children getting shot, which was unheard of. And I think that it's just the callousness and recklessness of the younger generation and their mindset of how things are done and how, retaliation is conducted. It loses its principle. And not that it's something that should have principles, but it's just that things were thought differently back in the day. For example, if you look at the history of the mafia around this country, they had particular targets. When there was a mob hit, there was a mob hit. They got who they were looking for, and that was it. There seemed to be less collateral damage of other people being shot or injured. And I think that kind of has a correlation between the younger mindset of some of these individuals who are out here in our cities with guns. I don't think that guns are the issue. I think that irresponsible gun ownership is part of the issue, because a lot of the guns that are in the street are guns that have been quote unquote misplaced, quote unquote, I moved and I don't know where my gun is. I haven't seen it in 2 years. I haven't seen it in 3 years. And these guns are ending up out here on the street. And now, of course, with the advent of 3D printing and, the ability to go to gun shows and order, basically manufacture your own guns. I mean, if you got a guy with a drill press and he orders some parts, we're getting guns off of the street now that are actually ghost guns, which have no point of origin. They're not serialized. And, and I always tell people that if you took every gun off of the streets in the United States, hypothetically, people would find a way to kill each other, whether it be with a knife, whether it be with a bomb, whether it be with a baseball bat. So violence is violence. Guns are just a medium by which violence is taken out, but they aren't the problem. The part of the problem is the individual's mindsets and somewhat of the irresponsible ownership of guns. And also you have straw purchasers, which are people that go out specifically at the behest of individuals who can't legally purchase guns, and they go out and they buy guns for them, and they turn those guns over to the criminal element, and next thing you know, they're out in the street and inflicting harm and hurt upon, innocent people oftentimes.
Wow. Okay. Definitely. Now, I'm asking another question in reference to where we're at today, as far as we're dealing with this pandemic. Did that have any bearings on exactly how you guys are able to do your job as a department, as a unit?
Well, of course, the pandemic has ravaged this entire country and even the world. In urban environments or in major cities, it creates a big issue because you have to, in a world of social distancing where people are supposed to be socially distancing themselves, it's difficult to be a police officer and social distance yourself from people, because oftentimes situations that you are jutted into, you have to have some type of contact with people. 6 feet is not always able to be maintained, because we know that in policing sometimes things can, go from sugar to shit in
Yes.
0.003 seconds, and it has created an issue. And and we just want to get people to understand that a cop going to work every day is a detriment, or could be a detriment to their family coming back home every day, because they're in a situation where they have to come in contact with people from all walks of life. So the pandemic has actually made policing increasingly harder, I'm sure.
Definitely. Now, just thinking about your unit in particular, too, as I think about, as you mentioned, those make those statements where you guys are crime scene investigators. You're going into a lot of time enclosed places. Are you guys taking any extra precautionary measures with the PPE based on the pandemic with COVID?
Well, I think that fortunately, our level of protection is always in existence and always has been, because we, when COVID hit, it really didn't change our protocols any. It just stepped them up more so. With for every house that we go into, or every scene that we go to, we of course have to use face masks now, face shields. So prior to that, we took every other precaution to prevent any contracting anything from any type of bloodborne diseases, because like I said, when you get to these scenes, man, you will have bodily fluids everywhere. Some of these most violent scenes, we'll walk into a room, and before we walk into any room, we should look up and check the ceiling, because depending upon how violent the scene is, man, it's possible to have bodily fluids, and different things anywhere in that room. So we have always taken those precautions. The only thing that has actually changed is just that the wearing of face masks in every scene that we go into, because of the ability of COVID, from the experts of it being airborne, and so that was just something that we had to just step up a little bit. But our levels of protection were always at a high level, because of what we deal with when we go into these scenes.
Gotcha. Now, like I said, based on what you're explaining to me, the normal person, this could take a toll on their mental health. And do you find that, that the cigar smoking and, a nice fine drink kind of helps, relieve some of the stress, because this is a lot to bear witness to? Again, you're going on, like you said, violent scenes, people who are deceased, and, I won't get too gruesome, but, folks, gunshot wound to the head or severed heads. So do you find that cigar smoking is a way to kind of get away from that, relax, and be able to have that nice glass of, maybe cognac or your whiskey, after a hard day?
I've always, luckily, I've been fortunate. I've always been able to decompress and be able to kind of mitigate what I saw at work and not allow it to impact me. Um, by the grace of God, I have had that ability to do that. But it's absolutely correct, man. At the end of my night, sometimes the first thing I do is come home, sit down, decompress, and enjoy a nice cigar to just kind of relax me and take my mind off of my day and kind of mentally prepare me and get me ready for the next day or the next call. So absolutely, cigars have been, like I said, since 1998, thanks to you, have been in my repertoire, and they have actually, are one of my go-to things that I use to kind of bring myself down and just really get into a zone and just relax and then try to take my mind off of things.
Oh, that's what's up there, brother. Well, look, man, I appreciate you talking to me. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that maybe we didn't cover about what you do and about some of the exciting things that go on in the city on a daily basis? Because you kind of broke down a little bit of everything. You got the shootings, we got, folks running around just doing, unfortunately right now we're in a different political system. I'm not getting into politics, but we are in a different place right now, I think, than what I'm used to seeing in my lifetime. I'm a young guy. I'm only 20. You know what I mean? I just got my license the other week. So, but I'm just saying, I'm seeing some different things going on. Again, not trying to get political, but, this atmosphere is, to me, getting a little too, left versus right, opposed to we all humans. Can we all just get along?
Exactly. And you know what? And my stance on that is I think that politicians have a responsibility, and I think that it gets into too much bickering back and forth, and they lose focus on the priority. And the priority is people. The priority is ensuring the well-being of people. But oftentimes, we have this battle between who can do it better. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't be about political party. It should be if we both have mutual ideas that can be beneficial to the well-being of all people, we need to work together collaboratively as opposed to, well, my idea is better and I want my idea pushed or I want my agenda pushed. And we also have to be cognizant of the fact of what the role that money plays in a lot of what is happening in our world today. Mm-hmm. We have to be mindful that everyone who appears to be or comes off to be having or to have our best interest at heart may not have our best interest at heart. Money plays a big factor in a lot of things happening in this world. Money plays a role in probably everything happening in this world in some
Absolutely.
way, shape, or form. And the thing about it is we have to be mindful of who we want representing us and who do we want the person representing us. Do they truly have our best interest at heart? And I think a lot of times people aren't truly aware of what people are capable of doing, are willing to do, and if they're speaking the same language as you as an individual. Another thing I want to emphasize to people, just like we talked about how CSI and television shows like that give people a false sense of security, a false sense of reality, and a false sense of what can be done in policing. I ask and implore people to educate themselves on the reality of law, educate themselves on what is within the realm of policing, because a lot of the issues that happen in this world today and the conflict, more specifically between people and police, a lot of that stuff can be eliminated if people educated themselves about what they can and cannot do. Oftentimes you'll see videos of things where it becomes an adversarial thing because, hey, you can't ask me to do this or you can't tell me to do this. I just tell people, educate yourself in what what the laws are, what your rights are. If you know your rights, people can't take advantage of your rights. And I admonish people too, because there's a time and a place for everything. Know what route you have or what ability you have to, or resources you have available to you to counter these things if you feel like you're wrong. A lot of times having a better understanding of the reality of things, as opposed to going off of what your reality is based on television. Television is entertainment. Television is supposed to have a bunch of high drama, high intensity, a lot of this, a lot of that, because it draws people in. But the reality of it is most of the things that happen on TV are completely contrary to what happens in the real world. And take a second to learn and see the other side of that. And that's why I just tell people that, just, be mindful of what you see on TV and not try to relate that to real life.
Wow. Like I said, well, that's very informative, folks. You heard it here. That was Jake. My brother here. He just gave you a whole mouthful, gave you education, just gave you behind the scenes on what happens here with some of these urban police departments. I appreciate you being a guest on Smoke World. Look, brother, I appreciate you. I love you, man. You be safe out there. I'm going to holler at you later, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, brother. Appreciate you having me, man. I love you too.
All right, man. Take care. Be safe. Peace.
All right, brother.